Hey everybody, it's Mike and welcome to Chip Damage. And today we're talking about limited run games. Limited run games, for those of you who don't know, is a small website that takes otherwise digital only releases of video games and makes a limited run of physical copies. I greatly appreciate this service. I prefer to buy my games physically. Call me old fashioned, call me a dinosaur, but if given an option to buy a digital or physical version of a game, I'll always opt for the physical. I'll buy digital if it's my only option, of course, but I like physically owning things. I like the tactile sense of owning it and being able to put it on your shelf. I realize it eventually just becomes a dust collector, but hey, it's something you can put your hands on and say you really own. So I really do appreciate sites like Limited Run, and they do a really bang up job with their releases. Now, there are two ways that Limited Run releases their games. There is the way where they open up a pre-order window for a game. They'll announce it ahead of time. They'll say it's open for about a month typically, and they will be made to order those physical copies, as in however many are ordered, that's how many they make. However, the more common way they do their releases is that they will announce ahead of time that a game is coming out on this date at this time, and there's this many of them. And if you don't get them at that time, they're gone. If they say there's 1,000 and you're not in that first 1,000 ordering, you're not getting it. My fellow shoehead collectors, my sneaker collectors will understand how that works. It's exactly like that. And as a side note, Limited Run doesn't just do a regular edition of the game. Typically, they'll have a regular edition of the game, and if you want to spend a few extra bucks, you can get a very nice collector's version of the game, which is usually even more rare or limited, and they do a bang up job with that. It comes with extra features, nicks and knacks, or a special case, and we're about to get into that, so let's jump right in. Oh, one last thing I want to mention before we start is that with their later releases, Limited Run has been issuing a card as a sort of certificate of authenticity with every one of their releases. It's usually the cover of the game or a scene from the game displayed on a holographic card, but they're very nice. I like having them, putting them in these plastic protectors. So if you decide to run out and buy a game secondhand, ask for the card. They're nice to have. They're nice to add to the collection. So let's get started, shall we? All right. First game I want to talk about would be SNK's release of Samurai Shodown 6. SNK has a very good relationship with Limited Run, as we're about to see, and one of their releases is this game. So this is limited to 5,000 copies. I was pretty lucky to get this one because Samurai Shodown's pretty popular. So Samurai Shodown 6 is like a dream match Samurai Shodown, and they kind of they don't worry about canon or story. They just kind of throw as many Samurai Shodown characters into this game and have them battle it out. Fun game. If you can find this one, definitely worth picking up. All right, moving right along. We have an indie classic. We have Octodad, Dadliest Catch. This is a game where you are an octopus pretending to be a human man with a family, and you have to make sure that no one suspects that you're not a human. And the whole gimmick of the game is that the controls are terrible. Since you are a squid, or octopus rather, you flop and flap all around, and you need to keep it together to do simple tasks like make breakfast or go to a museum. And the more you kind of mess up, the more people suspect, so you can't let that happen. This came with a bonus item. This came with the Octodad's tie that he wears throughout the game, and when I saw this, I needed to have this. And it's a nice red tie with Octodad symbols all over. I think I'm probably going to wear this to my next job interview, so please wish me luck with that. There were 4,500 copies of this produced, and I'm glad I got my hands on this funny little game. Sticking with the indies, we got the physical release of Icy, which, if you don't know, is an indie 2D action platformer / hack and slash, where you play as the titular Icy, kind of like a female ninja warrior who must fight through an army of robots, and also kind of fights the narrator of the game. You can kind of break the flow of the game and get into some really wild situations that I don't want to spoil here. But this is a fun game with tight control, good sword play. Definitely worth checking out either physically or digitally if you can get your hands on it. This was also one of their releases that had a month-long pre-order window, so you might be able to find this one still. All right. Sticking with the indies, one more time, we're going to look at Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon. Now, as many of you know, this was the 8-bit prequel to Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Both these games are an homage to the Castlevania series, so this is basically an 8-bit Castlevania that was made in 2018. And this was on like a dozen or so digital storefronts, PlayStation, Switch, Xbox, 3DS, Vita, PC, but there was no physical version. And I'm very glad that Limited Run decided to do that. They released a few versions of this. I decided to go with the PlayStation 4 version, as I did with many of the games you're about to see. But I was surprised there was no physical release for this, but I'm very glad that Limited Run did it. All right, moving on to more SNK games. I was able to snatch a copy of one of my favorite games of all time physically, that is Garo Mark of the Wolves, originally released on the Neo Geo and then the Dreamcast, and then a myriad of digital storefronts like Xbox and PlayStation. But there hadn't been a physical release of the game since the Dreamcast, so I'm very happy that I was able to get my hands on a brand new physical PS4 version. And as I did with many of the games you're about to see, I actually double dipped with this one and got the limited edition, which there are only 1,500 of. What this is this comes in a Neo Geo-esque shock box, as they were called. When the Neo Geo was a system from the early 90s that was very expensive to purchase at the time and even more expensive to collect for. The cartridges were huge, about the size of this box, and they would come in boxes like this. And in that vein, Limited Run decided to release some of their SNK games in packages like this as an homage to those old packages. What they also do, as you'll see, is they number each one of their games with their Neo Geo games with this little logo here, LRNG. That's Limited Run Neo Geo, and this is the 8th one of the Limited Run Neo Geo games. As you can see, I love that little touch. It's a nice little thing if you decided to spring the extra money and get the collector's edition. So one of my favorite games of all time. Had to have it physically, double dipped. Another SNK game that I love that I double dipped on was the King of Fighters 98 Ultimate Match. Yet again, this is a classic SNK game. The 98 Ultimate version of the game was actually released back in 2008 on PS2 and Xbox 360, but there hasn't been a physical release since that PS2 version, so I'm very glad Limited Run decided to do that. Yet again, I got the limited collector's edition with the shock box with this one, and I'm very glad I did. If you've never played this is a 3-on-3 game with like 50 SNK characters, a dream match, one of the most revered fighting games of all time, especially on the SNK side. I don't care how you get this game, but if physically or digitally, but you got to try it at least once. This is kind of a great entry point into the world of SNK, at least in my opinion. There were 2,000 of the regular version produced and 1,500 of the collector's edition produced. So, a little hard to come by. Excellent games. All right, sticking with SNK, but jumping over to Samurai Shodown. We have Samurai Shodown 5. This game was originally released on the Neo Geo as well as the digital storefront of the PlayStation Network. And I'm very glad they decided to release this physically. This is usually seen as one of the best games in the Samurai Shodown series. You can still buy this digitally. I fully suggest it. It's one of the best weapon-based fighting games I've ever played. I decided to go with the collector's edition as well, and this would be Neo Geo Limited Run Version number 5. There were 1,500 of the limited edition produced and 3,500 of the regular edition produced. Excellent game. So, moving on to some of our weirder titles. I'm really looking forward to this. Let's take a look at one of the older releases that Limited Run has done, and that would be Night Trap. Now, if you don't know what Night Trap is, this is the reason why not on this game, but this little rating is on most games, the ESRB, along with Mortal Kombat and a gun shooting game named Lethal Enforcers. This game caused such a stir when it came out that Congress, the U.S. government, decided to enforce a rating system so that deviant material like this wouldn't get into the hands of minors. This is not a good game, but this is a wacky, weird game, very interesting. You play as a security guard who's watching through a bunch of cameras as vampires try to break into a teen slumber party, and you need to spring traps on those vampires to save the girls. And it is all with live action footage. It is really weird. You can download this digitally. I decided to pick up the PS4 version just for the sheer insanity of it. But this one was special because this also came with a Night Trap 25 years later special DVD where they speak to the director and the history of the game and what's happened to the cast of the live action cutscenes since then. So I really wanted that. I wanted so much, I double dipped, and I picked up the limited edition that has kind of like this classic horror movie rental cover, or Goosebumps if you're a millennial, like cover. I really enjoyed this. I just couldn't believe that Night Trap, a Sega CD game released in 1993, I believe, would get like so much attention. So definitely check this out if it's on sale on the PlayStation Network or Switch. Don't expect to have like a tight gaming experience, but expect to have a few laughs. And it's an important part of gaming history that I think is worth checking out. So, Night Trap. As a note, there were 3,000 physical editions made of the PS4 version and 1,500 of the limited edition versions. So, all right. Moving on, we have one of their more recent releases, and that would be Panzer Dragoon on the Nintendo Switch. So this was another game that you had a month pre-order window to pick up. Panzer Dragoon, this is a remake of a Sega Saturn classic that was first released on Switch and then about a year later released on PlayStation 4. I opted to get the Nintendo Switch version. It is in a Sega Saturn case, which if you've seen some of our other videos, I'm a fan of. I love the Sega Saturn, so I'm glad they decided to reproduce that. And it's a great game. Some people are a little divided on whether they like the remake's visuals or not. They don't quite have the polygonal charm of the Sega Saturn version. But hey, I love this game. It's a rail shooter in the vein of Star Fox, but Star Fox with the ability to turn left and right and look behind you while continuing to move forward, kind of on autopilot. I would suggest downloading this game if you want a few hours of fun. It's a good rail shooter with a lot of character, and you're not going to get quite a lot of games like this made anymore. So check it out, Panzer Dragoon. It's a lot cheaper than the Saturn version, I'll tell you that. All right, so going to another indie, we are looking at River City Girls, which was released on PS4, Xbox One, I believe, the Nintendo Switch. This is the limited edition of River City Girls. There were 1,500 of these produced. And I love this game. This is a 2D beat 'em up in the vein of Final Fight or Streets of Rage. Kind of a tie into the River City Ransom universe as well. Same general world. You play as two high school girls who need to rescue their boyfriends who have been kidnapped. You fight your way through a myriad of punks and teachers and other students, and almost a Scott Pilgrim-esque, if you've ever played the beat 'em up way. Lots of charm. Fantastic soundtrack. And this game was made by Arc System Works, the guys responsible for the Guilty Gear series. Fully recommended. I don't care how you get this, but get your hands on this if you're a beat 'em up fan at all. You can have a really good time, especially with a buddy. Go check it out. That's River City Girls. All right. And if you've seen any of our other videos, you'll know I'm a huge fan of the original Xbox, and one of the best exclusives on that console at the time of release, in my opinion, was Munch's Odyssey. From the Oddworld series of games. Now, if you're familiar with Oddworld Munch's Odyssey, it was an early Xbox game that was kind of like a puzzle platformer action game. It was decently popular, and it ended up getting a re-release a few years later on Switch and PS3 and Vita. And this is actually a physical version of the Vita version that limited run down. There were 2,000 of these produced. This came with a CD, a collectible poster, a drink can. I know it was odd to get a Vita version of this game, but hey, it's odd. It fits with the Oddworld theme. Love this game. Download it if you want like kind of more of a heady action platformer. But yeah, Oddworld Munch's Odyssey on the Vita. Great little game. All right, so now we're moving on to another Oddworld game, an older release, and that would be Oddworld Stranger's Wrath on the PlayStation Vita. This was another original Xbox exclusive that later got released on the PS3 and Vita digitally, and Limited Run decided to do a physical version of both. I decided to go with the Vita version, as you can see. In this time, the Limited Run did not do the holofoil cards that you see over here. They did postcards, and they also came with a sticker. So these, if you look to buy a copy of these, try to get the sticker and postcard. They're nice little bonuses, not essential, but pretty nice. And as far as print run, I believe this was a month-long pre-order window for this one, so you might be able to get your hands on it. It's a pretty good game. All right, moving on to one of the more well-known franchises. We are going to look at Shantae's Risky's Revenge. This was originally a DS game, the second game in the Shantae series, a pretty popular little indie series that's really picking up steam in the last few years. But for a while, it was kind of hard to come by this game. Like I said, originally it was a DS game. It got re-released on a lot of storefronts, PS4, which is the version I decided to pick up. There were 6,000 of these produced. Fun 2D platformer. This is a lot of people's favorites, along with the next game that we're about to talk about. This one, yet again, came with postcards. This came with a postcard of Shantae as well as a sticker. So if you look to pick it up, make sure you get those. I'm running out of space here. I'm getting buried in games. Moving to our next one, we have Shantae and the Pirate's Curse, the third game in the Shantae series. I'll mention here, I like the Shantae games. They're Metroidvania-esque RPG platformers, side-to-side action. You kind of re-explore levels. You have towns, you level up. It has like a Betty Boop style of animation, a little anime inspired, made in the US by a team called Way Forward. Really good 2D game designers. This one also came with a sticker, a purple sticker from Limited Run, and yeah, want this postcard as well. So if you look to pick it up, make sure you get the postcard and sticker. So, all right, moving away from Shantae, we are looking at one of the more odd titles that Limited Run decided to do. We are looking at Firewatch. This is a walking simulator, as they're called today. You play as a park ranger that watches for fires. You sit in a booth, like a loft, and you talk to one of the other rangers in the park, and you go to explore the park a little bit. There's not much action, but actually it's a pretty interesting story and can draw you in. There's some moments of suspense. This has a very odd number, production number. There were 7,300 of these made. I don't know why that number was chosen, but that's what it is. There's 7,300. This came with a few things. This came with a postcard saying "Greetings from Wyoming," where the game apparently takes place. It came with a map of the park, which is nice. You don't do too much exploring in the game, but it's nice that they have that. And it also came with this red postcard. So if you want the game complete, you're going to need all three of those, as I mentioned with the Shantae games. Speaking of Shantae, there was one more release that very recently came out, and that is Shantae and the Seven Sirens. That would be the fifth Shantae game, if I'm not mistaken. I opted for the limited edition of this. This was another month-long pre-order window game. This was released digitally on iOS originally at first. I know that kind of triggered people a bit because the iOS version came out well before the console version. But it's a fun game, continuing Shantae's adventures. The interesting thing about this release, for all my anime fans out there, is that Studio Trigger, famous for animes like Kill la Kill and Little Witch Academia, actually did all the cutscenes for this game. So it has really nice anime cutscenes. So if you pick this one up digitally, look forward to that. All right, one more SNK game, but not a fighting game that Limited Run did, and that would be Windjammers. Windjammers is a competitive frisbee game released back on the Neo Geo and now on multiple storefronts, Switch, PS4, Xbox. Windjammers is like American Gladiators, but with frisbee. Like the idea is to throw the frisbee past your opponent like a game of hockey, but you have special moves. You set the frisbee on fire, like you do trick shots. They released a couple versions of these. I decided to go with the collector's edition for the PlayStation Vita, and there were 2,000 of these produced. It's a really fun game. Check it out. Watch some videos. It's more fun to play than to watch. But if you're looking for a fun night, like one-on-one action, Windjammers. And that concludes my collection of Limited Run games, as it were. But Limited Run does a few other things besides purely video games. They also do soundtracks, which I love. Some of them are signed by the composers. If you're able to snatch those up, those go super quickly because they are limited like the rest of their items. And here are some of the ones I've been able to acquire. I got a CD of the King of Fighters 98 soundtrack. King of Fighters 98 has some fantastic old school music on it. This has a ton of tracks, 45 tracks, some nice art on the side. They also did a vinyl of this, but I was only able to get my hands on the CD. And it's a really nice little CD with a nice art on it. Anything SNK, I'm kind of a sucker for. So if you can't get your hands on this, download the soundtrack to King of Fighters 98. Great game, with great music. And my most recent purchase of Limited Run, I want to talk about, and probably the one I might be the most excited for, are the vinyl soundtracks of Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2. Now, I ordered these quite a while ago and they just came in. These are both 2-record collections of all the soundtracks from the Dreamcast classic Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2. And if you're a Sonic fan or a gaming fan in general, you know how good the soundtrack is to that. Everyone knows the theme to the opening level of Sonic Adventure 2, rolling around at the speed of sound. I needed these. I do not have a vinyl player yet, but when I do, the first thing I will play on them is Open Your Heart from Sonic Adventure. These were another open window pre-order. You had about a month to get these, but they, at this point, the resale value on these is insane. Just as a side note, if you don't know how good the music is for Sonic Adventure, disregard anything negative you may have heard about the actual games themselves. These soundtracks are stellar and need to be listened to. All right, I think I've rambled on long enough, and that's my whole collection of limited run games. I will continue to purchase from them. I have a few things coming in from them. One thing I will mention about limited run that may be considered a negative is whatever date they say they are going to ship an item, let's say they say August, add about 3 months to that. It is a small company. With the recent state of the world, things have been slowed down even more, and they've just been pumping things out, taking on a lot of productions, and they are quality, they are worth waiting for, so I don't mind the little bit of slowdown or the delay in release. I would fully suggest that you check them out and see if there's anything upcoming that you want. So that's been my spiel on limited run games. Thank you for taking this very long journey with me as I go through them all. I'm sure we'll have more to talk about limited run in the future. So thank you for watching. Thank you for your time, and I'll catch you later. Thank you.